Hello YouTube and welcome. It's been a little while since I posted a video. I've been very busy in other aspects of my life. I'm still working on some gravity videos and really do hope to have them up soon. Apologies if you've been waiting for them. I'm going to try and do quite a quick sort of live debunk video just now. I was having a coffee and the video I was looking at on YouTube, and the video from Ranty Flat Earth, as he is now calling himself, appeared on my recommended videos. And it's this one entitled 18.7 mile ball busting observation on a flat Earth. And in the thumbnail here, it has the caption, "According to the globe, this is impossible." Well, that piqued my interest, so I had a little look at it, and after watching it, I immediately thought, well, he's actually shown nothing of the sort. But 5 minutes research really confirmed that, and not only confirmed that what Ranty has shown here is most definitely not impossible on a globe Earth. In fact, far from it. It's exactly what the globe Earth predicts. But it's also another nail in the coffin of the flat Earth, because it's impossible on a flat Earth. So I'll play a bit of Ranty's video and then make some comments as we go through it. Excuse the noise in the background. This is the wind and Ranty's microphone. It starts by panning across the scene that we are going to be talking about.
We have Walney Lighthouse. You can just make out the chimneys of the house that sits behind the sand dune behind it. The focal height of Walney Lighthouse is 69 feet.
Okay, I'll try and get back to a slightly better shot than that. Yeah, okay, that'll do. So yes, this is Walney Lighthouse, this tower here. And it does have a focal height of 69 feet above sea level. There are visible intermittently two little white spots, one here that you can just about make out and another one that appears here. And these are chimneys of a house next to the lighthouse tower.
We're seeing down to the base of that lighthouse.
So Ranty says that we're seeing down to the base of the lighthouse. Okay, well, let's have a little look at that and see whether that is in fact an observation, if that claim is true, and then we'll see if the observation itself is what the globe Earth would predict. So Walney Lighthouse has a focal height of 69 feet. It has an overall height of 79 feet, so that's to the very top of the tower. It's 10 feet above the height of the light. And that's above sea level, because that's the height. Heights are always given above sea level for lighthouses. Other buildings, if somebody says that the building is so many 100 feet tall, that is usually at the height above the ground level on which that building is constructed, and not the height above sea level, unless it happens to be built with a base at sea level. But for lighthouses, it's usually above sea level, mean sea level. Now, if we actually have a look at some pictures of Walney Lighthouse, we see that it looks like this. We have a tower, the light at the top, and then above that a roof and a little finial or whatever on top of that, which presumably accounts for the other 10 feet. And you can see that next to the lighthouse, Walney Lighthouse, there is a 2-story dwelling house. There's also this white wall and some low building here, garages or sheds or whatever. So the question that I have for Ranty is, if we can see the chimney pots of the house, which is what Ranty claimed we could see. Hang on, I've got to find Walney Lighthouse now. Okay, well, let's go back to this one. We can see these chimney pots, as Ranty claimed. As we'll see, this central chimney pot is hidden behind the tower from our vantage point, our viewpoint, or Ranty's viewpoint. We can see this chimney and this chimney, the ones at the gable ends. And why can't we actually see the rest of the house? After all, it's all painted white. Only a small portion of it is grey, the roof, and even that has these dormer extensions, which would appear should appear to reflect plenty of light back to the camera, and we should be able to see them, and we can't. It's also worth making a little note here that the area that houses the light itself occupies that kind of height in the image of the tower. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, and perhaps as many as 4 times that height down to the horizon or near the horizon. Oops, I hit start again. Just going back to the lighthouse picture, and there are plenty of other pictures that we can look at of the same thing. So if you take this block here, which is the dark part on Ranty's video, and you come down 1, 2, I haven't got the time to measure this out accurately, 3, perhaps 4 and a little bit, we're level with the tops of the chimney pots here. So that suggests that what we're actually observing is everything above a line you might draw across here. And the question is, why can't we see the rest of it? Why can't we see all of these buildings? This is at least another 1/3 of the total height, plus of course the 9 meters of sand dune on which the whole thing is constructed. Why can't we see that? This vantage point for this photograph is actually very much the same as the line of sight that Ranty had from his position. So here I've drawn these lines in from Ranty's, or as close as I could get to Ranty's actual position. He was out on the sands, so difficult to pinpoint his position absolutely precisely, but I think I'm pretty close. And here is Walney Lighthouse. It's about 13.5 miles from where Ranty was located, for those of you who work in miles. And you can see the tower, and from our line of sight, the tower would be in the way of this chimney here. But we should see the ones on either side, and indeed that's what we do see. But we should also be able to see down to the base. And Ranty claims we can see to the base of the lighthouse, but that is clearly untrue. We are not seeing anywhere near the base of the lighthouse. So, Ranty, where is the rest of the building? Where are the sand dunes on which the building is located? And you cannot claim that this area here is sand dune, because the house is located on top of the sand dune. And when I say on top of, I mean on top of. At this point here, according to the Google Earth elevation, and I'm sure that Ordnance Survey and others will confirm that this is indeed a higher point. This is about 9 meters all the way around this dwelling here. Goes down to 8 meters over here, but on this side and around the front here, it's at 9 meters. And if you look elsewhere around here, it remains at 9 meters. It never really gets above 9 meters. As we follow our line of sight back here, gradually starts to drop. So it comes to 8 meters here, and now it drops down eventually to 7. Down to 6. A 5 to 4, and eventually back to roughly sea level. So while the precise figures may be out by a little bit, because Google Earth is not going to be perfectly accurate for these elevations, they're within a margin of error. This land all slopes down on our line of sight, and the Lighthouse building is actually built pretty much on the highest point there. So why can't we see? I mean, 9 meters translates to 30 feet. This the total height of the Walney Tower above sea level, mind you, is only 70 feet. And that includes the 30 feet of the sand. So we should be seeing all of the house, which I would imagine is about 30 feet high, the rest of the tower, which should be about 30 feet high, and the sand dune. All we can see is the top of the tower. And the amount of darker area here gives us a good idea of the proportion of that tower that we're seeing, and it corresponds coming down to the rooftop there. So wonderful evidence that indeed much of the lighthouse buildings and the sand dune are in fact obscured by our horizon, the water horizon here. Let's go to a curvature calculator. Now, Ranty talking about 18.7 or 18.5 miles, but this refers to other buildings in the video. Walney is about 13.5 miles from his location. And Ranty claims that he was 4 feet above sea level. But of course, he was 4 feet above what was probably roundabout mean sea level. He's on the sands, on the beach, on the west coast of North England, near to Fleetwood and Cleveleys and these places, where he does quite a few of his observations. It was low tide, and that's clear from his video, as we'll see later. So in fact, he was, if his tripod height was 4 feet, then he was probably a little bit higher above, or definitely a little bit higher above the sea. Let's say it was 10 feet. Now the refracted hidden height is only for 49.62 feet. And since we can only see the top of the tower, the portion of the tower that extends above the roof of the dwelling, that would seem to be pretty close. He might have been as much as 12 feet, and obviously this now changes the matter a little bit, and in the favour of the globe Earth. And I'd have said that in the most extreme case of low tide and where Ranty was placed, probably about 14 feet above the water would be far more would be possible. So he could even have been as high as 14 feet above meaning that only 41 feet of the tower should be obscured. But regardless of whether his height was 10, 12, or 14 feet above the actual level of the water, the observation we have is entirely in keeping with the globe Earth calculator. Remember too that when the tide goes down, when the water level drops, it drops between you and the object you're observing. So it has the effect not only of raising you up higher, but also effectively relative to the water, but also raising the object that you're looking at up higher as well. And that curvature calculator there does not take into account that effect. So this observation, perfectly acceptable. In fact, not perfectly acceptable, exactly what would be predicted on a globe Earth. Let's continue.
Next we come to Barrow in Furness, the town centre. There's the Barrow Town Hall. There's the medical centre to the right. Behind it we have the, is it St John's Church, I believe. And there we have a very nice line of sight to it. Just in front of these buildings, why we're not seeing down to the floor in this particular instance, is the sand dune. And the camera.
Okay. Oh, hang on, I want to play that again. So Ranty says that we reason we can't see down to the floor. I'm not quite sure what he means by floor, but I think he's just used a poor choice of words there. He means to ground level is the sand dune. I'll play it through because this next comment is particularly absurd.
Dune. And the camera isn't resonating with that.
Yes, he says the camera isn't resonating with that. I'll just go back a little bit further, play that again, just so we can hear very clearly what he actually says.
Seeing down to the floor, in this particular instance, is the sand dune. And the camera isn't resonating with that.
The camera isn't resonating with that, presumably resonating with the sand dune. You must have some fancy kind of camera if it resonates with objects that he's looking at. But anyway, that's a minor point. Let's have a look at these two buildings. This is not St John's Church. This is St James's Church in Barrow, and this is the town hall building. Let's look at Barrow Town Hall. This is Barrow Town Hall, and many pictures of it. And we can see clearly that it has quite a tall tower, clock tower on it, and we can make out the white of the clock face on Ranty's video. But the tower is only half of the total height of the building. This piece of roof here is higher than the rest of the building and extends up above the tower a little bit. And that's going to be visible in our image, or should be visible in our image. But the question is, where's the rest of the building? Let's go back to Ranty's video. We'll make this full screen so you can see what we're talking about. So we have the clock face visible here. It's on all four sides, so it certainly should be visible. And the base of the tower seems to be somewhere around about here. The highest bit of roof that we can see looks like it's about there. So that suggests that the tower actually continues down here. Where's the rest of the building, Ranty? And where's this sand dune that your camera can't resonate with? I can't see any evidence of sand dune here, and you certainly haven't provided any evidence that there's a sand dune in the way. We can't actually see it. We can see an area of sort of haziness and indistinct, perhaps building roofs and so on here, but I can't see any evidence of a sand dune, let alone a resonating one. The height to the top of this tower, I believe, is around 70 meters, and the height of the building itself is, I should have this somewhere here, yeah. I've just done a quick search. It's given us 50 meters, but as I said before, height of buildings is generally given from the ground to the top. And if we look on Google Earth, and we go, hang on a minute, we have to get to the place we want to be. Here we go. So these two lines of sight here from Ranty's location go to the town hall and to the church, which is a little further away. So here's the town hall, and our line of sight roughly to the town hall. The one to the church maybe, we've never got these absolutely spot on here, but they're close enough. The land around here, according to Google Earth, is some 19 meters above sea level. So Duke Street here is coming up at 19 meters, a little lower around here, down to 15 meters, 19 meters, but yeah, that's the sort of height of elevation we're talking about. 17 meters at the very front of the building there. So let's pop back now. I think it's about 18 miles to the town hall, and more like 18.7 to the church building in the background. If we put in a viewer height of 14, well, let's go down to 10 feet. Let's be generous. We have 109 feet of obscured height. Now, if we just convert this to metric, remember, building elevation above mean sea level was around 70 meters. The building height itself around 50 meters. And we see that the refracted hidden would be 33 meters, and that leaves 17 meters to be above that height if it was only 50 meters tall, and 37 meters, almost twice the height, just more than twice the height above the horizon if indeed it's a 50 meter tall building on top of 20 meters, roughly 20 meters of land. So that seems to be in pretty good agreement with what we actually observe. The calculator says that we see just about to the base of the tower, maybe a bit more. And when we look at a picture of the building, we see that the tower is about the same. Ooh, pardon me for clicking on that. Let's close that. The tower is about the same height as the rest of the buildings. The base of the tower about halfway up the building. Plus we've got the land that it's built on as well. So if we can see the tower and maybe a little bit more, we're seeing roughly half of that total 70 meters. And that's what the calculator says. Half of 70 meters is 35 meters. Under standard refraction conditions. Not much different really, with no refraction taken into account at all. We still have 30 meters visible above the horizon. So what about St James's Church in the background? Well, St James's Church spire height is given as 46 meters. That is presumably the height from the ground to the tip of the spire. And if we go to Google Earth and we continue just under a mile further back, here we come to the church and its spire. and the ground around the church is at roughly 25 meters. This road, 24 meters, 25 meters. The grass around the church itself at 25 meters. So once again, we have something that is about 70 meters high. It's a little bit further away, but not very much. And so we ought to see it, the top of the spire being about the same height as the top of the tower on Barrow Town Hall. And we ought to see, not be able to see the most of the church building itself. You can see it's got a very high roof here, and we might be able to see some of that, because remember, half our height above sea level would include the land on which it is built. So we might see maybe even most of the roof, the spire, but not right down to the ground. And Ranty acknowledges that we can't see right down to the ground. Here's the spire, extending up to roughly the same height as the building itself. It's close enough in such a fuzzy picture to be able to say that that's in keeping with what we'd expect. And I can make out parts of building here next to it, which is presumably part of the roof of the church itself. But we can't see the whole of the roof. The church building itself should extend some way down here, and all we can see there is water. Of course, the globe has a perfect explanation for that. The water is following the curve of the Earth, and therefore there is a horizon, a water horizon between us and the building, which obscures the base of this building, the base of this building, and the other buildings around about, so that we can only see rooftops. So once again, cameras resonating with sand dunes notwithstanding, the globe model predicts exactly what we observe.
However, bear in mind that these should be gone beyond the curvature of the Earth if you believe in a sphere.
No, Ranty, they shouldn't. And had you actually bothered to go and do some research, you would have realised that.
It's a nice view here of Devonshire Dock Hall. Absolutely sensational. Elevation above sea level right now, 4 feet.
Ranty claims his elevation above sea level is 4 feet. He says relatively little about these buildings. It's clear that there is some distortion going on in this image here. I haven't looked up these buildings. I simply don't have the time. There is obviously a taller chimney tower to the left, which again I would anticipate is exactly what would be predicted. It does appear, to me anyway, that these buildings are extending quite high and appear to be quite close to the camera in some ways. When we actually look on Google Earth, the buildings that I believe he's referring to are the ones in the dock area around here and here. Well, this would be on the other side of the buildings. So the ones sort of in this area, possibly this one here, and it's I don't know if I can get an image of that. I might not get one from the car park because the 3D buildings won't work from the car park. Hang on a second. Let's put it down in the road. just here. Yeah, there's a wall between us and those buildings, but you can actually see these are pretty tall buildings, and that is that the oh, that's a lamppost. Okay, that's not the chimney. But these are pretty tall buildings. We're close to quite a high wall here, and they're extending up pretty high. So it's not that surprising that we can see these from Ranty's particular viewpoint either. Be quite happy if somebody knows the area and can find out the heights of all the various buildings in this area. Feel free to sort of do some analysis. Don't forget to take into account Ranty's actual observer height, because it does make a little bit of a difference. Clearly, we have seen that the images that Ranty observes are exactly what would be predicted on a globe, particularly if we're looking at buildings that I have found information about, the church spire and the town hall building, and the Walney Lighthouse buildings as well. Towards the end of the video, Ranty says, you've got a vague recollection, he said something that I just wanted to bring up, but I can't remember what it was.
It's the ramp, a couple of steps. I'll give you my...
He spends some time trying to explain where he is, rather than just picking out a particular landmark and saying, that's where I am.
Location, as I say, 19 miles away.
And it's just here to make the point. He is clearly at low tide. The tide is out, and although he's standing on this sand here, and the sand looks sort of level, it must be above the level of the water. Otherwise, it would be covered with the water. So, and this water here is water flowing out towards the sea. Either because it's been trapped behind other higher sand, or because there's actually a stream or a river runoff. This is there's really not very much water here. It's very, very shallow, although it's reflecting. He's on the sand, and the sand is above the height of the water. When the tide comes in this area, it pretty much comes up to these sea defences here, and because it's all sandy here, all along this coast is they have these concrete sea defences, because even a normal high tide, it extends quite a long way up, and will usually get to this point and higher, and then extreme tides higher still. But the sand continues to slope all the way down to the sea, and the sea, even though it may look as if your feet are level with the surface of the sea, you will be several feet above the height of the water if you are this far back from the water.
It's a beautiful day today. There seems to be no refraction at all.
That's what I wanted him to say. Yes. No, I remembered him saying yes. Ranty makes this fantastic assertion that because it's a beautiful day, there's no refraction. Well, I'm sorry, Ranty. Refraction occurs even on beautiful days, and there will always be a certain amount of atmospheric refraction. However, as we saw earlier, you don't really need any or very much refraction to provide a perfectly adequate explanation for your observation. Your observation fits with the globe Earth predictions as per curvature calculators, Google Earth, and so on. Your observation does not fit with what we would expect on a flat Earth. On a flat Earth, you have a direct line of sight between yourself and the sand dunes and the dwelling house around Walney Lighthouse, yet you cannot see it. On a flat Earth, you would have a direct line of sight to the whole of the Barrow city centre. Some buildings would obscure others, but you would be able to see all of the buildings, and not just the rooftops or the towers and spires on the top of some of the tallest buildings. So your observation confirms that the Earth cannot be flat and provides more evidence that the Earth is indeed a globe. So thank you very much, Ranty, and I will go back to getting on with my gravity videos now.